Hi, everyone. I'm Elisabeth Trischler, and I'm a PhD student in my second year at the University of Leeds. And today I'm going to be talking to Carmen Costanza about Paradiso 25. Carmen, how are you?
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you so much for inviting me doing this. I'm very well, and I hope you are well too. And so, I'm Carmen Costanza. I'm in my first year of PhD in Dante Studies at the University of Leeds.
Fantastic. So we're in Paradiso 25, which is in the heaven of the fixed stars. And in the previous canto, so Canto 24, St. Peter comes forward at the invitation of Beatrice to examine Dante on the nature of faith. This is the first of three examinations that takes place. So in our canto, Canto 25, the second stage of Dante's examination occurs, which is performed by St. James, and he asks Dante about the theme of hope. And then following this, St. John the Evangelist appears at the end of this canto, and in Canto 26, he will then ask Dante about the theme of charity. So before Dante is examined by St. James, he expresses a yearning to return to Florence and to be crowned as a poet. Carmen, I know this is a particularly interesting moment for you. What importance do you find in Dante's use of the term poema sacro at this point in the poem?
So this is something that always strikes me, and I always ask myself, but what does Dante mean when he calls his poem poema sacro? And so my question at some point became more precise, and is Dante trying to rewrite the Bible? And I really believe that in a sense, yes, this is what he's trying to do. But just to make sure that Dante is not an heretic, when I say that he wants to rewrite the Bible, I don't mean that he wants to change the truth conveyed by the scriptures, and so all the doctrinal knowledge conveyed by the church. Because if we also remind that the Bible was mostly experienced in the Middle Age in a liturgical environment, then we recognize that the stories told by the Bible, and by both testaments, but in particular by the Gospels, were stories in which the faithful were invited to dwell in. And so what Dante actually does is we can say, add something new to the scriptures, which is the story of his life and the story of his world in dialogue with God. And indeed, we can say that if scriptures, the Bible, and again, in particular, the gospel, tell us what salvation is, and so who is that saves us, the question behind the writing of the Divina Commedia is, who am I? And so how salvation is performed. And this is, first of all, very engaging, especially for the readers, because if someone can use the scriptures not just as something to say, okay, this is the truth and this is all we need to know, but using this as a starting point to go further with the question and saying, if this is God, then who am I? And also because Dante never denies that all the knowledge he has about God and paradise and the important truth about the universe and the world, they come from scriptures. And indeed, is what we read. He says, da molte stelle mi vien questa luce, ma quei la distillò nel mio cor pria, che fu sommo cantor del sommo duce. Sperino in te, nella sua teodia, dice, color che sanno il nome tuo, e chi non sa s'egli ha la fede mia. Tu mi stillasti con lo stillar suo, nella epistola poi, sì ch'io son pieno, e in altrui vostra pioggia repluo. So now he's clearly stating how his faith comes from the scriptures. So this is actually very interesting, because this makes us also think why it's so important for Dante to be acknowledged as a poet, because as I was saying before, if the question of the Divina Commedia is, who am I in this story, in God's story, then it definitely becomes important to define Dante's identity. And again, he wants to be acknowledged as a poet because his way to add to the scriptures is through writing a new poem. But what he also asks us is to find what is our identity to add in a different way, maybe, to the scriptures. And also because this is, in a sense, a mission. So it's not something related just to Dante, but to other people. And I think, Lisa, you have something important to say about not just the importance of the individual, but the community.
Yeah, so I think that especially in this canto, but throughout the whole poem, the idea of community is obviously incredibly important. Dante wants to share his poem. He's not keeping it to himself. He wants, everyone to read it and everyone to learn from it, and to join his community on earth as well as in heaven. And I think what's really fascinating here is his use of the term chiostro. So this is one of 8 times within the entire poem that he uses it. And he often rhymes it with nostro and vostro, as he does here. And what I find...
I know the lines you are talking about. I think it's 124 when he says, in terra e terra il mio corpo, e saragli tanto con gli altri che il numero nostro con l'eterno proposito s'agguagli. Con le 2 stole nel beato chiostro son le 2 luci sole che saliro, e questo apporterai nel mondo vostro. Am I right?
Exactly. So that rhyme of nostro, vostro, and chiostro at the end of each line is I think really important here, as well as when he uses it throughout the poem, because it's linking the communities of heaven and earth together. So here, nostro refers to the heavenly community, but vostro refers to the community back on earth that Dante needs to return to. And I just find this fascinating because I think Dante's trying to say something about this mingling of heaven and earth, where heaven is not the opposite of earth, just as the cloister isn't the opposite of the world or a barrier or escape from it. The cloister is supposed to link heaven and earth, and the teaching that is found there, or say in the religious life generally, where these examinations took place, it's not supposed to be restricted only to the cloister and to that religious community, but instead it needs to be used by all members of society to improve the world. So just as Dante doesn't keep the poem to himself, he must share his journey and the knowledge that's gained from it. He wants to improve everyone, not just himself. And I think that's really important, and it's just really kind of a fascinating idea to think about throughout the poem, but also particularly at this moment. And I think if we wanted to turn now to the end of the canto, where we kind of are anyway, St. John the Evangelist appears, and he explains that he doesn't have a body, that only Mary and Jesus have a body in heaven at the moment. And Dante is kind of confused by this. He doesn't really understand why. And St. John tells him that he needs to report this information back to Earth to kind of clear things up for people on Earth in a way. So when I was reading through this again recently to do this recording, I was thinking about, the idea of the body, and over the past couple of months, how much that's changed and how it's come very much to the forefront when thinking about the lockdown, and how we're often only engaged in kind of a, not just your soul, but as a floating face on a computer screen, and that your body needs to learn how to navigate the world in a different way, and that we need to remember the importance of both the soul and the body in these very strange times, and how we need to keep the body fit and active. We're not a stationary society, and I'm sure Dante would agree with that. And we need to kind of ensure that our bodies are healthy and will return to us at the end of time. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on the idea of the body and soul being separated in this canto.
Yeah, definitely. I think the idea of this body is so very much present in this canto from the very beginning, because when Dante says that he hopes to be acknowledged as a poet, he says, con altra voce o mai con altro vello ritornerò poeta. This is a very bodily, in a sense, way to put it, because he says, I will come back with a new voice and a new vello. This word is a bit tricky, this word, because even commentators don't really know what he is referring about, because it can be, there are so many images behind it, but it definitely is a very bodily image. And also, when St. James asks him, what is hope? And in more specifically, what is that you hope? Dante will reply, le nove e le scritture antiche pongon lo segno, ed esso lo mi addita, dell'anime che Dio s'ha fatte amiche. Dice Isaia che ciascuna vestita nella sua terra fia di doppia vesta, e la sua terra è questa dolce vita. E il tuo fratello assai vie più digesta, là dove tratta delle bianche stole, questa rivelazione ci manifesta. So, we know that here on earth, the Catechism teaches that hope is not just in the resurrection of the body, but Dante stresses only on this point, which I believe is really, really important, because, again, going back to what we were saying before, your body is what is like a marker of your own identity, because you are this person, you are this body, and not anyone else. And so the idea that your body will be preserved, restored, and renewed at the end of time is something that really, really gives hope, because it's like saying everything of you, your specific identity, will be preserved, and because it's loved now. And as you were saying, Lisa, it's a bit hard to live out this today after the pandemic and so all we had to go through. But at the same time, probably is something even providential, because with internet and even the way we think about knowledge is something not so much integrated with our own bodies. So we really need to learn how to take care of this, how to embrace our bodily reality as something very important and an important part of our identity. And so this really gives hope, I believe, and makes us think that everything of us is loved. This is the Canto of Hope. So what do you think about this and this idea of hope?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of hope is obviously very present in this canto, as it should be. But I think, again, it's tied to this idea of community, which I think is important for us to think about right now as well. You're not supposed to keep that hope to yourself, but to spread it between communities. So as he says, with his reference to the Old Testament, to the New Testament with David and St. James, the spread of this hope is like raindrops. And I just think that that's, the most beautiful kind of imagery that, it's just trickling down into everyone, and they're all like, enjoying in this hope together as a community. And I think with Psalm 9 of David, which is literally translated and then quoted in Latin by the Chorus of Souls, it links Dante to this heavenly community, and he becomes a part of it, just as everyone will eventually. I think what's also really important is the reference to St. James's epistle, which doesn't specifically refer to the idea of hope, but I think because it's encouraging those who are persecuted or experiencing difficulties to stay strong and to persevere. This epistle, as well as the Psalm reference, kind of remind us to continue and to hope in these extremely strange times of the pandemic. I also really like that at the end, towards lines 112 to 114, where Dante refers to the moment at the Last Supper where St. John reclines in Jesus's bosom. It's like you're feeling embraced as well. It's just so comforting, and it reminds you of that comfort and joy in human touch. And even though that's been removed from us for the most part right now, it also reminds us, of that safety that we feel with community and with our friends and family, and that comfort that we have in those people that we trust. And again, the safety of the space of the cloister from the evils of the world. This is all kind of intertwined, and it kind of reminds us, especially now when we are, taking a risk every time that we leave the house, and that we can't embrace our loved ones right now. We can't find that comfort and safety, but I think that at least through words, you can maybe get a little bit of that, just as Dante so amazingly expresses it with the raindrops and with this image that he creates of St. John in the bosom of Jesus. We know that those communities are out there, and that even though that community that you have maybe back home, I know I'm Canadian, you're Italian, we're not where we were born. I think that that's really important because we can very easily speak to those people and find a community there. But I think one of the things that I've found most kind of amazing about this time, obviously there's been incredibly hard things with this as well, but that you start to actually know your community that's around you, that you go out and walk in every single day. And, as you circle that block, you recognize faces and you smile. And I've noticed people are much more eager to speak to each other now than they were before. And I think that's really comforting. And I think to go back to Dante is reminding us of this, in that, community is what is so important to our individual lives. You need community in order to get anywhere. And I think this idea of hope, especially now, and being embraced by the community is just so important. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, just I totally agree with you. And the way Dante says this, when he says that the scriptures pongon lo segno. Again, this is a very bodily way to put his point, and to know also, before he said, sperino in te, nella sua teodia, dice color che sanno il nome tuo. Obviously, we need to put our trust in someone, but we need to know this someone, and definitely community and the bodily experience of the people around us, as you were saying, those even bodily, physically close to us, is the way through which we can gain this knowledge. And so I have a foretaste of what is going to be in the future. And so we can have a certain hope, because again, as Dante teaches us, hope is something certain, is to wait for something that has to come, but with a certainty. And so we need a bodily experience already, foretaste of what has to come. So, yeah.
It's just so beautiful and so interesting to think about, especially now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think we might be closing towards the end here. So thank you for discussing Paradiso 25.
Thank you, Lisa. This was awesome. We should do this more often.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.